All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to Sip&Talk.
Welcome, everyone, and hello. You know, we sometimes, we swap opening lines, right?
Fuck you. I'm not going to stop you. You learn mine, I'll learn yours. Welcome, welcome.
Yeah. I think that establishes a certain level of trust between us.
It's a vibe.
It is. Hey, I am feeling fantastic today because we are jumping into a topic that came straight from you, our listeners. We got a stack of incredible feedback.
We really did.
And several of our loyal Sip and Talkers wrote in with this really sharp observation. They basically said, you guys often analyze the absurdities coming out of Beijing, but you really need to look closer at Taiwan. There are some crazy things happening there, too, especially with government budgets.
And they are absolutely right to call us on it. So today, our mission is exactly that. We're going to try and dissect Taiwan's defense and public procurement landscape.
We've really dug into the available data, and we want to be super clear about our approach here. We're acting strictly as, let's say, external observers. Our goal is not to criticize or pass judgment.
Nope.
It's more to objectively look at certain practices that may have become kind of normalized within the system. But when you look at them from an international perspective, they carry these potentially huge and dangerous blind spots, especially now with the whole geopolitical situation.
The contrast is it's genuinely jarring. And I think it's the perfect frame for today's whole conversation. Just think about the process for defense contractors here in the U.S.
Right.
Companies like, Lockheed Martin or Raytheon, they go through an extremely rigorous vetting process.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking intense financial scrutiny, deep background checks on everyone, comprehensive compliance reviews.
It's a fortress of paperwork and due diligence. The bar is set incredibly high.
It's a multi-year effort just to get on the approved vendor list. But what we've seen in Taiwan, based on the reports we've looked at, is this bizarre, almost counterintuitive thing happening. A system where, effectively, if you have the right piece of paper, anyone can bid.
It seems like the institutional barrier to entry for getting these critical government contracts, even really sensitive ones, is just unbelievably low.
And that low barrier leads us right into our theme for today. We're going to unpack two major structural blind spots that really stem from this whole culture.
So first up, the core security threat. How tiny, seemingly unrelated companies, and yes, we mean actual tea shops, are winning massive critical defense contracts.
And second, how the exact same kind of misplaced priorities mean that these really smart, crucial policies, like just making sidewalks safer for people to walk on, get sidelined by political incentives that favor, the big, flashy ribbon-cutting projects.
Okay, let's get into it. And we have to start with the case that truly broke the internet over there, the infamous tea shop scandal.
This is where the story just gets wild.
It really does. So the case study is centered on a company called Hongzhang Tea, based in Kaohsiung. Its main business was, well, exactly what it sounds like, selling tea.
Okay, a tea shop.
But here's the critical data point. They had a registered capital size of only 100,000 new Taiwan dollars.
And just for context for everyone listening, NT $100,000 is about 3,000 US dollars.
Exactly. $3,000.
$3,000. That's barely enough capital to buy decent office furniture, let alone maintain a high-tech naval server system.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Despite this tiny, almost negligible amount of capital, this one company managed to secure 16 different government IT equipment bids.
16
over a 5-year period, totaling over 18 million NT dollars.
Which is what, about 580,000 US dollars?
Around that, yes. And the most shocking, the most critical part of that, those contracts included crucial server maintenance for the Navy Command headquarters.
Wait, so we're talking about the central nervous system, the absolute backbone of the nation's defense communications, handled by a $3,000 tea company.
Correct.
If I were writing a spy novel, I'd get notes from my editor saying, the plot is too unbelievable for making the villain a tiny tea shop owner who controls the Navy's servers.
But this isn't fiction. And the reporting suggests this wasn't just some isolated, quirky mistake, was it? It really seems to be a pattern.
Well, it is absolutely a pattern. We found other just as absurd examples that confirm this is a wide open field for what they call cross-industry bidders.
Like what?
For instance, we saw reports of an interior decoration company, a business that, usually handles office remodels and picking out paint colors.
Okay.
They won a massive NT $590 million bid for the procurement of explosives and dynamite.
Hold on, an interior decorator is in charge of ordnance security.
Precisely. And in another case, a shoe company specializing in footwear.
You're kidding.
Nope. They secured a contract worth NT $200 million for the supply of ammunition components.
So, in theory, you could have a company that usually helps you pick out throw pillows suddenly being responsible for making sure the ordnance doesn't, blow up prematurely.
And a company that makes sneakers is now assembling bullet parts. It's truly a case of this extreme and I would say highly risky, slashy entrepreneurship meeting core national security.
Let's talk about the fundamental danger here. It's this massive disparity between the company's capital and the national risk they're being asked to manage.
This is the core issue of what's called financial liability. In a place like Silicon Valley, as you said, if you're bidding on a $500,000 contract, say, for maintaining sensitive financial servers, your company would face intense credit vetting. You'd be required to hold millions in liability insurance.
Of course.
But if that tea shop botches the cybersecurity, if they cause a catastrophic data breach, or even just a simple physical security failure in that Navy server room, that $3,000 in capital, it won't even cover the basic deductible on a proper insurance policy.
Let alone the cleanup costs or the national security damage.
The risk is completely uncapped for the nation. It's just an unsustainable balance of risk. Which brings us to the really chilling question. Why on earth did the military allow this? They had to have known the risk was high.
The documents we looked at point to one simple yet tragically short-sighted reason: the relentless pursuit of cost saving.
It always comes down to money.
The tea shop offered a bid that was 40,000 NT dollars lower than a long-established reputable computer company that also bid on the contract. They won because they were the cheapest.
So the finance department, probably under pressure to cut costs, prioritized that tiny saving over verifying the stability, the expertise, and the long-term reliability of the company protecting critical defense infrastructure.
That sounds like a textbook example of being penny-wise and national security foolish.
They're prioritizing a marginal cost saving, less than $1,300 US over the foundational stability of their naval server environment. It's mind-boggling.
And we need to acknowledge that the military wasn't necessarily acting illegally here. They were operating within the constraints of the government procurement law, which is itself the primary reason these things can happen.
Okay, so what's the legal bar then? Just how low is it set?
It's startlingly low. To legally bid on these types of contracts, a company generally only needs three things.
Okay.
Legal business registration, proof of tax certification, and if they're buying foreign parts, they need the original foreign manufacturer's export license or some kind of agency authorization.
And that's it.
That's pretty much it. Critically, the size of their capital, that NT $100,000 number, is often not an absolute reason to exclude them, especially for non-major construction or supply contracts.
So if I have a P.O. box, a general business license, I pay my taxes, and I can somehow sweet-talk a foreign company into giving me a distributor letter, I can claim I'm qualified to fix sensitive defense systems?
In many cases, yes. The system is designed to favor competition through price, not pre-qualification through, expertise or scale.
And there's a specific term for this, right? The lowest bid system.
Exactly. A huge number of these maintenance and service contracts use the GUE system, which is a lowest bid mandate. It automatically selects the company offering the lowest price.
And that system is just going to favor the small, low-overhead guys every single time.
It disproportionately favors them, the one-person companies. That Hongzheng Tea Company, for instance, reportedly relied solely on its one owner and just used contract-based workers.
So they could keep their operational costs at rock bottom, undercutting even a moderately sized IT firm.
I've heard this whole approach called the side hustle registration loophole. Can you explain how that administrative trick actually works?
Oh, it's a masterclass in bureaucratic compliance without any professional substance. When a company registers with the Ministry of Economic Affairs, they can just tick off every administrative box that could possibly apply to them.
So they start as a tea shop.
They start as a tea shop, but they also check IT software wholesale, military supplies procurement, and computer maintenance. As soon as those boxes are checked, they gain the legal eligibility to bid on contracts in all those fields.
Regardless of whether they have a single technician on staff or any genuine operational capacity in those areas.
Exactly. It's like registering your dog as a financial advisor because you check the box for animal-assisted therapy and general consultancy.
It's technically compliant on paper, but it's fundamentally and dangerously misleading about what the company can actually do. The whole system just prioritizes paper eligibility over proven expertise.
But let's ask the question I think a lot of listeners might be thinking. If Taiwan were to just dramatically raise the capital requirements, say you need $5 million in capital for a contract of this scale, wouldn't that hurt the small, genuine tech startups?
That is the essential policy dilemma, and it's a very good question. Yes, if you raise the bar too high, it definitely hurts legitimate, innovative, small companies.
So what's the solution?
Well, the current standard is so low, $3,000 that it doesn't even meet basic risk assessment criteria. So the solution isn't just raising the capital bar, it's about imposing specialized pre-qualification requirements.
Like what?
Like demanding proof of certified in-house technical staff, verifiable operational history in that specific field, and mandatory scaled liability insurance, especially for defense contracts. The tea shop, even if it was owned by a genius programmer, couldn't meet those operational standards.
Now we have to move beyond just, incompetence and discuss the darker implications here, which get into serious security threats. This is the risk of front companies, or what are sometimes called white gloves.
What's the main danger when a tea shop is the prime contractor?
It creates extreme supply chain opacity. If a small trading company is just an intermediary, they subcontract the actual highly sensitive work to whoever is cheapest that day.
Right.
So the military knows the tea shop won the bid. But who is the final person who actually walks into the naval server room for maintenance, who has access to restricted systems?
They might check the ID of the person walking in, but they don't know who employs that person, or who controls them, or what kind of quality control is being followed.
And this layered subcontracting, it just massively obscures the final supply chain. It's a giant flashing red light for cybersecurity threats.
And if the winning company, whether it's the decoration company or the shoe company, is just a middleman, they're just simply funneling the contract money.
The money flows through all these layers, making it almost impossible to track who the actual executor is, and even more importantly, who controls the original funds.
Which brings up a really serious funding concern. When these small, low-capital companies suddenly receive millions in defense funds, is there penetrating scrutiny? Are they checking deep enough to see if these companies have hostile foreign capital behind them?
Because if a company is only worth $3,000, a tiny injection of external, non-friendly money could immediately seize operational control of that defense contractor.
And in a high-stakes geopolitical region like that, that's not just a commercial risk. It's a vulnerability to actual infiltration.
It's the perfect mechanism for state actors trying to get backdoor access. But surely there's a way to stop bad actors from just re-entering the system once they've been caught, right? Like a blacklist system.
You'd think so, but the blacklist system seems to be failing spectacularly. It's often referred to as the cicada shedding its shell.
Okay, explain that.
We know that the former person responsible for that Hongzhang tea shop, a Mr. Huang Hongjun, had previous convictions for forging contractor qualifications. He was convicted, briefly suspended from bidding, and even lost a lawsuit for failed performance.
So the system worked, and then he just came back. How?
Because of this perpetual entity loophole, or what some people call administrative reincarnation. Once the suspension period ends, or if the individual just changes the company name and structure, say transferring ownership to a spouse or a friend or a new person, like in this case, they can re-enter the bidding process almost immediately.
So the system punishes the company name for a little while, not the individual who committed the fraud.
Exactly. The new owner then claimed to have extensive IT certifications, legally allowing the enterprise to just keep going. It's a deliberate way to get around accountability. You ban the entity, but the fraudulent manager just starts a new shell company the next day.
And this issue of opacity, of not knowing who you're dealing with, it gets even murkier when we talk about the NCSs.
NCST, that's the National Chung-Shen Institute of Science and Technology. It's Taiwan's main defense R&D hub, where they design missiles, radar, advanced systems. Why is that a gray zone?
Because its internal procurement activities are often not fully regulated by the standard government procurement law. This creates a regulatory gray zone where, speed and efficiency in R&D are prioritized over transparency in the subcontracts.
So they need to move quickly to develop systems, but that urgency means less visibility into the supply chain.
And that's the pipeline where sensitive components can allegedly slip through. We've seen reports alleging contractors engage in what's called origin washing.
Origin washing.
Yeah, where cheap, potentially compromised components, sometimes sourced from the mainland, are imported, repackaged, and then mixed into sensitive defense systems.
So you could have, say, sub-assemblies being labeled as domestically sourced to meet targets, or just replacing high-grade metal components with cheaper foreign alternatives to pocket the difference.
Exactly. So if a tea shop can win a Navy server contract for cheap, and the premier R&D center is using components with manipulated origins, you have these massive systemic gaps in national security.
Which is terrifying, because Taiwan's defense budget is projected to break NT $900 billion by 2026, and that's absolutely necessary given the external threat.
But if the quality and transparency of the procurement doesn't improve with that increase, all that money's just flowing into the pockets of middlemen and front companies, not genuine defense capability.
Exactly. If Taiwan's national security is relying on a slashy tea shop employee who happens to be a contract worker fixing critical naval servers in their downtime, the problem isn't the budget size, it's the structure of accountability itself.
All right, let's pivot now from national defense to something much more mundane, but affected by the exact same flawed logic: daily civilian life.
I remember walking in Taipei before, and honestly, it felt less like a city stroll and more like I was auditioning for American Ninja Warrior.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. You're walking along a nice flat path, and suddenly the sidewalk just
vanishes. It just ends abruptly in a curb, or it's completely blocked by a giant utility box or a telephone pole right in the middle. It becomes this permanent, frustrating obstacle course.
And this really highlights the core issue in policy priority across the entire government: the incentives mismatch. This is where political science meets urban planning.
Officials overwhelmingly prioritize landmarks or these highly visible projects like a new sports stadium, a big bridge, a new public library, because those are visible political achievements, or lead.
They generate immediate positive photo ops for elections and ribbon-cutting ceremonies. They look fantastic on a campaign flyer. You can say, "Look what I built."
Meanwhile, the truly crucial work is basically invisible. We're talking about basic safety. Improving road geometry to reduce crash angles, standardizing confusing signs, adding simple pedestrian refuge islands that save lives every single day.
But those tasks don't get you a splashy photo op. They provide what politicians see as a zero-sum political return, or at least the benefit is so spread out and long-term that it's workless for a 2 or 4 year election cycle. It's the classic short-term political calculation.
And this lack of rational design is painfully visible on the roads themselves. We've seen what looks like a forest of signs, where the traffic signs are so numerous and confusingly placed that they actually overwhelm drivers instead of safely guiding them.
And this is where that lowest bid mentality infects urban design. It's not about safety, it's about the tender process.
It is. We found that the procurement process for road projects often works on a price per unit basis. The structure of the tender encourages bad design. The more signs or traffic lights you install, the higher the total tender amount.
So it incentivizes over-implantation area, or benefiting the contractor, rather than prioritizing clear communication and safety.
The easy, lazy governance solution is always to just add another physical object, another light, another sign, instead of fixing the road geometry that caused the problem in the first place.
And there's a deeper political mechanism that keeps this awful status quo in place: the fear of change.
Right. Improving pedestrian space means you have to reduce something else, usually parking spots or traffic lanes, and that reduction immediately angers a small but extremely vocal segment of the voting public.
Car owners, scooter users, the people who prioritize convenience over public safety.
And in a hyper-competitive democracy like Taiwan's, officials, fearing short-term protests or bad headlines, almost always choose the status quo. They maintain the bad, unsafe condition because it minimizes their immediate political pain.
So it's politically safer to have ugly, dangerous sidewalks than to take away 2 parking spaces and face an angry crowd at a town hall meeting.
This professional asymmetry we talked about in defense, it extends catastrophically into civilian projects, creating what we call invisible black holes of public funds.
The quintessential example here has to be the endless cycle of road digging and patching that you see in every major city.
Oh, it's the definition of urban chaos. We see endless digging because the utility units, water, power, gas, communications, they don't coordinate their maintenance schedules.
So one company digs up the road to fix a water pipe, patches it poorly because their contractor was the lowest bid.
And a month later, the power company digs up the exact same spot for its cables. This leads to frequent rebidding on the same stretch of road, which always favors the lowest bid guys, and results in perpetually uneven roads, constantly increasing the risk of accidents.
The system is structurally designed to reward inefficiency.
And this inefficiency impacts core emergency systems, too. Think about inactive disaster monitoring. Stations for critical risks, like landslide sensors in remote mountainous areas, are often awarded to companies that lack proper maintenance capability.
They win the bid because they're the cheapest to install.
But their maintenance contract is equally low bid and short term. So if the station breaks down and stops sending data, which happens a lot, no one notices or bothers to fix it until a disaster strikes. And then the early warning system fails completely.
It sounds like the perfect breeding ground for that rent-seeking model.
It is. Small contractors, the ear test, they just act as financial middlemen. They get the contract with the lowest bid loophole, take a high profit off the top, and then massively compress the costs for the actual crew doing the work.
And that cost compression leads directly to shoddy workmanship, or some even. Tax money is just funneled into the pockets of intermediaries instead of being spent on quality materials and skilled labor.
And we have hard, alarming data on the results of this. It's the high cost of low quality that the public ultimately pays.
The numbers are staggering. Taiwan's public works budget is NT $588.6 billion in 2024 alone, but the failure rates are astounding. Reports show that project delays are running at 86%.
Nearly 9 out of 10 projects are behind schedule, and additional budget requests, cost overruns are hitting 68%. These figures are they're way beyond international standards for public works.
So 2/3 of projects eventually blow the budget later on, but only after they've been awarded to the cheapest contractor based on that initial flawed budget.
We can see this in major examples. The Taiwan Airport Terminal 3 project is notorious. Repeated contractor failures. A stunning 95% delay rate. The Taipei Dome is another symbolic case. A decade-long delay, massive budget increase, continuous political controversy.
And crucially, this isn't just about wasted money. In the most tragic cases, it's about life and death.
That's the most critical connection. We have to mention the 2021 Taroko Express accident, which killed 46 people. That accident was directly rooted in a lowest bid construction project in a high-risk area, which led to structural instability around the track.
The relentless structural pursuit of the lowest price in critical public works directly cost dozens of lives. If the procurement system is broken for Navy servers, it's broken for life and death national infrastructure.
So let's zoom out and look at the political environment that allows these systemic issues to persist and even get worse. Since the 2024 election, Taiwan has been operating under a minority government, or
which literally means small ruling party, large opposition. The ruling party doesn't have a majority in the legislature, so they face immense political resistance.
And this divided government model leads to predictable policy paralysis. The consequence is immediate. The passage rate for executive proposals in the first half of 2025 dropped significantly to 65%.
Down from an average of, 80% over the last 8 years?
Yes, that's a 15-point drop in their ability to govern effectively. And the opposition parties use procedural mechanisms to block crucial proposals. They use a tactic called JAT. They don't just vote no on the floor, they stop the proposal from ever even reaching the floor.
A prime example being the National Defense Special Budget.
Exactly. A NT $1.25 trillion budget, vital for long-term security. Yet it was reportedly blocked repeatedly in procedural committees, preventing it from ever getting a full floor debate.
That is the ultimate political weapon, using procedural rules to stop necessary defense spending from even being discussed, just for political leverage.
And the clearest result of this gridlock is massive budget cuts. In the 2025 budget review, the opposition exercised an unprecedented total cut, slashing NT $207.6 billion. That's 6.63% of the total budget.
The highest comprehensive cut in 2 decades. Which programs feel the most pain from that?
It hits national programs across the board: public construction, social welfare, and critically, defense. For an external observer, this struggle is so important because it shows the difficulty in achieving a national consensus on security when domestic politics comes first.
This resistance leads to the next maneuver: the politicalization of funds, deliberately shifting money to areas controlled by the opposition to strengthen their local base.
That's right. The legislature revised the Financial Equalization Law, or SUM. This law decides how tax revenue is split between the central government and local governments.
And the revision effectively shifts over NT $300 billion in revenue from the central government to local governments. That's a massive power and budget shift.
It is, and it serves a distinct political incentive because the opposition parties control 15 counties and cities. So this massive financial transfer is essentially political maneuvering, or distributing pork.
It allows the opposition to prioritize local pork barrel projects, parking lots, local subsidies in their strongholds, strengthening their base.
While simultaneously kneecapping the ruling party's ability to fund large-scale national programs, we're talking about crucial things like national health insurance subsidies, which suddenly face a NT $33.6 billion shortfall.
And of course, the defense budget becomes a direct target in this partisan game.
Absolutely. We saw an example where the opposition cut NT $41.5 billion directly from the defense budget and moved it toward local stability initiatives like police funding. This directly undermines core national defense priorities, like nationwide drone procurement programs.
It's a fundamental conflict. Short-term political gains are being prioritized over long-term, self-strengthening priorities necessary to deter threats.
Now, to put this all into context, let's briefly do a financial stress test. While the NT $949.5 billion defense budget for 2026 is necessary, the gridlock and the tea shop scandal raise the crucial question. Is the money being spent effectively?
So how healthy is Taiwan's overall financial situation?
It's remarkably stable. It faces a projected slight deficit in 2026, a very manageable negative 1.40% of GDP. This is not a structural financial crisis. Their debt-to-GDP ratio is low, below 31%.
So Taiwan's issue is fundamentally one of efficiency and transparency, not an immediate financial catastrophe. They have the money. They're just struggling to spend it wisely.
Now, let's use the U.S. for scale, just to frame how different the financial realities are.
Right.
The U.S. context, in comparison, is a structural financial crisis. The 2026 U.S. federal deficit is predicted to hit a staggering 5.8% to 6.7% of GDP. That's between $1.7 and $2.5 trillion. Our national debt-to-GDP ratio is over 100% and rising fast.
Wow. So Taiwan's issue is making sure a $3,000 company isn't handling sensitive contracts, which is a fixable procedural problem.
Well, the U.S. is grappling with a structural debt that is growing exponentially and threatens the stability of our entire future budget.
The contrast is stark. Taiwan has the financial capacity to solve its problems, but it lacks the political consensus and procedural integrity to ensure every dollar is used efficiently.
Their problem is a crack in a strong foundation. The U.S. is dealing with a collapsing roof.
So what's the prescription? We've laid out this deeply entrenched problem. Where do we even start the fix?
We have to start with a collective consciousness awakening. We have to move beyond refusing to criticize just because it involves our own people.
Right.
The observation that a tea shop is handling naval servers must be met with constructive scrutiny and public outrage, not excuses. Logic has to replace blind allegiance.
So what's the citizen's toolkit? What are the practical steps people can take?
The most powerful weapon is data transparency. Citizens have to push for a mandate on open data for procurement. We need the winning contractor's background, their corporate structure, and their actual performance history. They're not to be public and easy to find.
So like a Yelp for government contractors.
Exactly. A simple Yelp rating for the tea shop. 1 star, server kept crashing, smelled faintly of stale oolong, would not recommend for national security applications.
Right. But seriously, that kind of searchable database would filter out 80% of these rent-seeking shell companies immediately.
It would. And for complex policy areas like road design or defense maintenance, we need to promote external expert review. The government has to mandate formal involvement from NGOs and civic groups.
To break up that official contractor closed loop?
The tight, often corrupt circle of low-bid contractors and the government officials who keep approving their work. Because right now, the only feedback loop is between those two, and it's incentivized by low price, not quality or safety.
We need external validators. We also need to fundamentally change how citizens interact with public spending, right? Moving from just consultation to a real partnership.
Precisely. We need to expand participatory budgeting, or ERJON. It shouldn't just be about citizens deciding how much money is spent. They should also be involved in the final verification and acceptance of projects, the VRR.
So if the public helps fund a park, they should have a way to sign off on the quality of the final construction before the contractor gets paid in full.
Exactly. It puts the power of enforcement into the hands of the people who actually use the infrastructure. And we can use technology to support this. Enhance platforms like the Join platform, or expand it to allow citizens to easily report substandard work.
And to make that truly effective, you need incentives. No one wants to spend their weekend doing free quality control for the government.
Right. Offer genuine incentives for citizens who report verifiable corruption or shoddy work a tax deduction, a financial reward. Create a distributed network of thousands of inspectors.
The long-term goal is simple. but it requires immense public effort. Public pressure is the only thing that can funnel decision makers to prioritize wise policies and maintenance over flashy ribbon-cutting projects.
If these loopholes, the tea shops, the frank companies, the blacklisting failures aren't fixed, the rapidly increasing defense budget is just going to be routed into the pockets of cross-industry businessmen and not into genuine, secure national defense. Our coffee is finished, but the core structural problem remains.
We need that widespread awakening of public consciousness to truly influence the people making decisions. This is about ensuring that the massive amount of money meant to protect the nation is actually used for that purpose.
And we have to end with a truly provocative thought for you to chew on. Given the evidence, the biggest threat to Taiwan's national security might not be external military aggression,
but the internal procurement system that allows a company valued at $3,000 to be put in charge of protecting a $500,000 naval server and all the data within it.
We encourage you, our Sip&Talkers, to challenge the viewpoints presented today. Debate these points with logic. Seek out multi-angled information and open up that information cocoon. Only through comprehensive review and critical thinking can we help push for real change.
Remember to subscribe to Sip&Talk for more of these conversations. And definitely check out our old friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickeytolife, for some fun memes and travel vlogs.
We'll catch you next time.